I think the beauty of mediation is you get to see both sides of the argument. You get to see the reality of what people actually want, what they need, what makes them tick. What are they trying to achieve? And then what I really enjoy is saying, okay, well, look, this is where you want to be. How are we going to get there? Let's do this commercially, not constrained necessarily by evidence, not constrained by what a judge can do, not being judgmental, not apportioning blame, but just saying, okay, look, you guys want to be here, these guys want to be there. I know where you both want to be. It's a case of bridging that gap and getting you there. And I think the most rewarding process in the mediation is actually understanding where the parties want to be, and actually getting them there. If you can, I mean, very successful thus far. There's always cases that don't work, but generally speaking, it's hugely rewarding. Spending a day with people, delving in and getting them where they need or want to be.
Hi, I'm Stuart Lawrence, founder of Mediator Locator, and welcome to Meet the Mediators. In this series, we'll be hearing from people behind the role, their path into mediation, the disputes they work on, what they enjoy most, and what it's like to be part of our panel. At Mediator Locator, we connect people, law firms and organisations with the right mediator for their case anywhere in the UK. And our panel is made up of expert lawyer mediators who are specialists in their respective sectors. Mediation's all we do, day in, day out. We don't just list mediators, we make sure that every case is matched with the person best placed to resolve it, whether online or in person. And this series is a chance to see the human side of mediation and why finding the right mediator can make all the difference. So let's get started. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by David Goldberg from E&W Solicitors. Morning, David, and maybe you can do a short introduction. Tell us a little bit about your background and what led you to where we are today.
Great, thanks very much, Stuart. Nice to meet you again face to face. So a bit about my background. My first degree was in politics, which I absolutely loved, and then subsequently converted into law. I then joined a small firm in Hertfordshire where I stayed for 20 plus years, became an equity partner there, and purely did exclusively disputes, litigation, contentious work of all mixed bags, other than matrimonial and employment. So shareholder disputes, contract disputes, and I also developed niche areas in what we call office management supplies, photocopiers, scanners, etc., which are all lease related, which is quite unique in legal arguments. And also I developed a niche in what we call utilities claims. So there's a huge amount of stuff going on under the ground. We've got electricity cables, gas cables, water pipes, etc. And there is legislation that dictates what goes on underground and who can do what and who can sort of break apparatus if one's above the other and there's an emergency situation. I was involved in a test case for YDL for that for a year or two, which was quite interesting. So I then left there. An opportunity arose to join E&W, which is a much larger practice, but still regional. So the head office, the hub is in Milton Keynes, and then Northampton, Milton Keynes, Watford, down to London. So we've got different offices and opportunities to do different work for different people. And the Watford office is just opening and is doing very well. So that's Brilliant. A great opportunity. So that's how I got here.
It sounds like the firm's really on the app, which is great news. And tell me, how did you get into mediation? I mean, I know from your profile you're a very experienced mediator, a lot of mediations under your belt. What was the prompt to get you into it?
I think the reality was years ago when mediation first started, it was very much a case of the mediator would pop into the room and say, well, we've got this dispute, we need to try and resolve it. What would you like to do? And it was very much a reactive process. And I got somewhat frustrated doing many of them, sitting there thinking, goodness, put your head above the parapet, actually say something, help us, be proactive, do something. And after a while, got somewhat frustrated about, thinking I can actually do this myself better. And I was often then sort of finding myself talking to the other side, bypassing the mediator, exercising the mediation process and getting somewhere. So at the end of the day, I figured, actually, I love this. I'm quite good at it. I sort of seem to have a natural flair for doing something along these lines. So I became accredited through CEDA and subsequently otherwise, and I now absolutely love mediation and what I do.
And just a quick follow up on how long you've been mediating now, David?
Goodness, man, you should have told me you were going to ask me that. Probably 7 or 8 years.
Okay.
So yeah, a whole mixed bag of stuff all across the country. So I do face-to-face mediations, which are obviously ideal if you can get them. But I was also very busy over COVID, doing mediations over Zoom, because you need the breakout rooms in Zoom, so you can't do it over Teams. And that was a very successful way, and it's also cost effective, and it does work if the parties are geographically distant, or people just don't want to be spending that money on accommodation and travel. So yeah, do a bit of both.
Excellent. Yeah. And obviously, as a big fan of mediation, what do you personally find most rewarding?
I think the beauty of mediation is you get to see both sides of the argument. You get to see the reality of what people actually want, what they need, what makes them tick. What are they trying to achieve? And then what I really enjoy is saying, okay, well, look, this is where you want to be. How are we going to get there? Let's do this commercially, not constrained necessarily by evidence, not constrained by what a judge can do, not being judgmental, not apportioning blame, but just saying, okay, look, you guys want to be here, these guys want to be there. I know where you both want to be. It's a case of bridging that gap and getting you there. And I think the most rewarding process in the mediation is actually understanding where the parties want to be, and actually getting them there. If you can, I mean, very successful thus far. There's always cases that don't work, but generally speaking, it's hugely rewarding. Spending a day with people, delving in and getting them where they need or want to be.
Yeah, and like you say, when you get people across the line, the pleasure that they have in knowing this dispute's out of the way is just immense. That's a huge point.
I think that's right. That it's a relief. I always say this. I've always say this, and I start this off on every mediation. A mediation is not about one party winning or losing. It's often a case of both sides have to just bear the pain, share the pain, and move on. Life is too short.
Yeah.
And if you go into a mediation, as you appreciate, as you go into a mediation with the idea of let's get this done, it's not a case that you've got to step back from things. And often lines in the sand are not that important. Sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't. But they're always, if it's about money, that's easier. If it's about property, rights of way easements, also slightly more tricky. But it can be done. If there's a willingness, and if people are prepared to compromise. It's all about compromise.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And you've got a vast experience over the years of mediating and throughout your career. Is there any particular type of mediation that you especially enjoy working on? Do you have a favourite?
I think I don't think I have a favourite, but I particularly enjoy. I mean, the shareholder disputes, partnership disputes are nice to resolve, because these are things where people have, they've got a relationship with each other. They've fallen out, but often there is a history there, and sometimes if you can get a history parked up, or use the history and use the current acrimony, and get that resolved, that's very satisfying. So I really enjoy getting over the line where we can with shareholder and partner disputes, because it's a personal issue, as opposed to generally the corporate debts, commercial debts.
Yeah.
So I really enjoy those. I've also, for some reason, gravitated into sort of property development stuff. So dealing with overages, easements, covenants, build-out disputes, that kind of stuff, which is quite fun, because it's quite unique, because I've never done property litigation. So it's sort of bringing in a commercial reality into what is a property thing, which is great. But I've also got two niches. First is, as I mentioned earlier, the utility stuff, street work, utility stuff, electricity stuff for the electricity boards, gas boards, water boards, that kind of stuff, and also the office management stuff where I'm dealing with leasing and that stuff. It's worth knowing how the industry works with rolling over leases and rolling over contracts, etc., because that helps if you understand that industry. But no, I will turn my hand to most things, because at the end of the day, it's not necessarily, as you'll appreciate, it's not about the law. It's about someone taking a relatively, a situation and grabbing people by the scruff of the necks and saying, guys, what do you want to do? How are we going to get there?
No, perfect. And you've alluded to a few of the benefits, but what do you think's the main benefit of using mediation? What's really its headline benefit?
I would say for the parties, closure, risk avoidance, saving costs, speed, etc.
Yeah.
Even in, you very rarely get a barrister who will say in a complicated matter, we're 100% going to win this.
Yeah,
There's always that litigation risk.
Yeah.
Clients don't need that. It's stressful, it's aggravation, it's costly, it's time consuming in money and energy. So I think that the benefit, the biggest benefit to the users of mediation and to the client is to get closure, close off the risk. Things are confidential if that's important. And what has happened, and I've done this in the past, where if it's a corporate commercial relationship and it's a contractual dispute, I have in the past actually got the parties to talk to each other. And maybe part of the resolution is to say, look, we've got this issue, there's money owed, we can't pay it because we haven't got it or whatever reason, but let's do something again in the future. Let's adjust the rates. And that is enormously satisfying, because where you've had parties with a history, they've fallen out over something and then they move on. It's a great thing. I think that's a really good experience.
That's an interesting point, because it kind of shows the flexibility of the outcomes within mediation. It's not as binary as a court outcome. You've got that ability to do different things and find innovative solutions.
100%. 100%. That is the beauty of the whole mediation process. There are no rules. Again, I say that no rules. Share the pain and move on. And if the parties are prepared to do that, absolutely right, Stuart. That is the beauty of the beast.
Brilliant. Okay, and last question, David, and maybe you make a comment on why you joined the Mediator Locator network.
Yeah, I mean, my experience of dealing with you and the business so far has been excellent, positive. You're very proactive. You're out there in the market. You're doing things, and the group panel members and the firms are good quality. So I wish you all the very best in expanding and growing that panel. There's a mutual benefit in us doing that.
Absolutely, and that's tremendous. Thank you very much. That's great. Thank you. So thanks everybody for watching this episode of Meet the Mediators. If you'd like to know more about mediation or need help finding the right mediator, or after today's chat feel David could be the perfect fit for your case, please visit us at mediatorlocator.com.